Look, let's be real for a second. You think you're in control. You're not. You're being played. Every time you pull out your phone to show the world where you are or what you're doing, you're just putting a leash on yourself. You think it's cool to be seen, to be known, to have people double tapping your life. But honestly, it's a trap. You're just making it easy for them to put you in a box. You're giving away your secrets, your moves, your whole vibe for a bit of fake attention. The Ghost Protocol is about flipping the script. It's about being that guy who's definitely there, but nobody can quite pin down. It's about the power of being a question mark in a world full of loud, predictable answers. While everyone else is desperate to be noticed, you're the one who's actually moving things behind the scenes. Think about the most dangerous person you know. It's not the guy screaming on the street corner. It's the one who can walk into a room, get exactly what he wants, and leave before anyone even realizes he was there. No trace, no drama, no data. That's the goal. You want to keep being a target? Or are you ready to become a ghost? Look, I'm not saying you have to move to a cave and eat roots. That's for people who are scared of the world. The real Ghost Protocol is about living right in the middle of the noise, but staying completely silent. Think of it like this. Most people are useful to the system. The algorithms know what they'll buy, who they'll vote for, and what makes them angry. But you start feeding the machine nothing but static. You stop being a source of data and start being a glitch. It's about selective absence. You don't disappear all at once. You just stop being predictable. If you're always reachable, you're just a commodity. You're like water from a tap. No one values it until it's gone. But if you're rarely seen, if your moves are a mystery, you become an event. When you stop explaining your life, people's imaginations start doing the heavy lifting for you. They build a version of you in their heads that's 10 times more powerful than the real thing. That's the strategic vacuum. You're not hiding because you're weak. You're hiding because it forces the world to play on your terms. You move from being a character in someone else's story to being the one who writes the subtext. Ready to see how deep this hole actually goes? Now let's get into the mechanics of how you actually protect yourself while staying in the game. This is the part where most people fail because they're too damn emotional. They think their reputation is who they are. They treat their public image like it's their own skin. If someone scratches it, they bleed, they cry, they try to defend it. That's a massive tactical error. The Ghost Protocol requires you to decouple your identity from your reputation. Think of your reputation as a cheap suit you bought just for a specific job. If someone spills wine on it or rips it, you don't care. You just take it off and put on another one. Your actual self, the person sitting here with me, is the architect. The person people see out there, that's just a persona. It's a tool. It's a distraction. Most people spend their whole lives trying to be authentic. What a joke. Authenticity in a world of surveillance is just giving the enemy a map to your heart. The ghost is never authentic in public. The ghost is strategic. You can build a public persona that is loud, vibrant, maybe even a little bit annoying, just to keep everyone's eyes on the left hand, while your right hand is doing the real work in the dark. This duality is your greatest shield. When you stop caring about being understood by the masses, you gain a level of freedom that 99% of people will never experience. You can take massive risks, you can fail spectacularly, you can let people call you whatever they want, and it doesn't touch you. Why? Because they're attacking the suit, not the man. Imagine the power of being able to burn down your entire public life and walk away completely clean, because your real assets, vaše znanja, vaše sviazi, vaše istine sut, were never on the table to begin with. People are so desperate for validation that they'll sacrifice their privacy for a bit of applause. But applause is just noise. The ghost knows that the only real validation is the result you get when no one is watching. You start looking at social interactions like a game of chess, not a therapy session. You stop looking for friends and start looking for nodes in a network. You stop sharing your struggles and start sharing narratives. It's about being the operator, not the content. Listen, we've talked about disappearing, but let's get one thing straight. You don't just vanish by turning off your phone and sitting in the dark. That's what people do when they're losing. If you want to win, you don't just cut the signal. You flood the system with noise. Think about it. In a world where everything is tracked, the only way to be invisible is to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. You need to start engineering your own digital smokescreen. Most people are so careful about their digital footprint. They try to look perfect. They try to stay consistent. That's their mistake. Consistency is a tracking beacon. If I know you always go to the same gym, buy the same coffee, and like the same types of posts, I own you. I can predict your next hour, your next day, your next year. The ghost protocol is about breaking that loop. You start feeding the algorithms garbage. You search for things you don't care about. You visit places that aren't on your route. You buy things that don't fit your profile. You become a statistical anomaly. You create so many fake versions of your life that the real one becomes impossible to find in the pile of junk data. It's like a chaff flare from a fighter jet. You release 1,000 false targets so the missile never hits the real plane. And it's not just digital, it's social. You need to master the art of the controlled leak. You tell people things about yourself that are true but irrelevant. You give them bones to chew on so they stop looking for the meat. You ever notice how some people always seem to be talking, but after an hour, you realize you don't actually know anything new about them? That's the skill. You provide a narrative that satisfies their curiosity without revealing your position. You become a master of the open secret. Let them think they've figured you out. Let them think they know your weaknesses. In fact, give them a few fake weaknesses to exploit. It makes them feel powerful, and a person who feels powerful is a person who stops being careful. While they're busy focused on the flaws you've manufactured for them, you're operating with total clarity behind the scenes. This is how you build a shadow network. You don't need 1,000 followers. You need 5 nodes. 5 people who are as invisible as you are, who share information, resources, and influence without a single public record of your connection. This is the difference between networking and sovereignty. Networking is about who knows you. Sovereignty is about who you can influence without anyone knowing you were involved. Most people are terrified of being lonely. They think that if they aren't part of the conversation, they don't exist. They're addicted to the ping of the notification, the dopamine hit of being included. But that inclusion is a cage. Every time you join a tribe, you accept their rules, their enemies, and their limitations. The ghost doesn't join tribes. The ghost builds alliances. An alliance is temporary, strategic, and based on results, not emotions. You don't owe anyone your loyalty just because you've known them for 10 years. Loyalty is a high-value currency. Don't spend it on people who are still stuck in the visibility trap. You need to be able to walk away from any situation, any relationship, and any identity at a moment's notice. If you can't drop everything in 30 seconds flat when you feel the heat around the corner, then you aren't a ghost. You're just a target waiting to be hit. Look around you. Everyone is trying to build a personal brand. They're trying to turn themselves into a product that can be bought, sold, and eventually discarded when the trend changes. Why would you want to be a product? Products have expiration dates. Products can be boycotted. Products are at the mercy of the market. You want to be the market architect. You want to be the one who sets the price, who creates the demand, and who stays in the shadows while the products fight for space on the shelf. This requires a level of discipline that most people simply don't have. It means staying quiet when you want to brag. It means staying hidden when you want to be praised. It means watching others take the credit for your ideas. Because you know that credit is just another form of visibility, and visibility is a liability. You trade the ego stroke of public recognition for the cold, hard reality of private power. In the end, this is about the long game. The world is getting noisier, more intrusive, and more judgmental every single day. The walls are closing in on everyone who decided to live their life in the open. They are the ones who will be taxed, tracked, and controlled. But for the ghost, the world is getting wider. Because while everyone else is fighting for the same bit of sunlight, you've learned how to own the darkness. You've learned that the most important conversations happen in the rooms with no cameras. You've learned that the real moves are made in the silence between the beats. You aren't just surviving the system. You're using its own tools to build a fortress that no one can even see, let alone attack. So, take a look at your life right now. Look at your phone. Look at your friends. Look at your reputation. How much of it is actually you? And how much of it is just a handle for the world to grab? It's time to start cutting the strings. It's time to stop being a useful part of their machine and start being the ghost in the wiring. Are you ready to stop talking and start operating? Because the real work starts the moment you stop caring if anyone knows you're doing it. Sit back down. We can't finish this without looking at the people who actually did it. I'm talking about the ones who understood the assignment before the world even had a name for it. Let's look at the financial world first. You ever hear of the ghost corporations of the 80s and 90s? Not the illegal ones, but the legal shells used by family offices that own half the infrastructure you use every day. You think you know who owns your water, your power, your data? You don't. You see a brand name on a building, but behind that is a holding company. And behind that is a trust. And inside that trust is a ghost. A person who pays taxes, follows the law, but has zero digital footprint. No social media, no public interviews, no Forbes list appearances. They realized early on that being on a list of the world's richest people is just a list of targets for kidnappers, tax authorities, and activists. They traded the ego stroke of a magazine cover for the absolute security of anonymity. They are the ultimate proof that you can own the world without the world owning a single pixel of your face. Or look at the intelligence community. There's a concept called gray man theory. It's the art of being so average, so unremarkable, that you become invisible in a crowd of 10 people. A ghost doesn't wear tactical gear or expensive suits when they're operating. They wear the uniform of the environment. If they're in a dive bar, they look like a guy who's had a long shift at a warehouse. If they're in a corporate lobby, they look like a mid-level IT consultant who's slightly bored. They master the background noise. There was a legendary operative in the late 20th century who managed to live in 3 different countries under 3 different identities for a decade. He didn't do it with high-tech gadgets. He did it by never being too much of anything. He never won an argument. He never started a fight. And he never left a lasting impression on anyone he met. He was the human version of a blank space. When the authorities finally realized he existed, they had nothing to go on because he hadn't created a single event in 10 years. He was the ghost in the machine long before the internet made it impossible. And then you have the modern digital nomads of power. I know a guy. Let's call him Marcus. Marcus runs a high-frequency trading firm that moves billions. But if you saw him at a local coffee shop, you'd think he was a struggling freelance graphic designer. He uses 3 different burner phones, encrypted laptops, and never stays in one city for more than 3 months. He doesn't do it because he's a criminal. He does it because he understands the value of his own data. He knows that the moment he settles down and starts building a brand, he becomes a node that can be attacked. By staying mobile and staying silent, he keeps the world guessing. He has no fixed address, no public assets, and no personal life that can be used against him. He is a ghost by choice, and his net worth grows in direct proportion to his invisibility. He is the architect of his own reality, and the world is just a playground he visits occasionally. Think about the architecture of power. The most influential people in history were rarely the ones in the history books. The ones in the books are the ones who got caught, or the ones who needed the fame. The real players, the ones who truly shaped the borders of our world, remained in the shadows. They understood that fame is a tax on your freedom. They understood that the moment you become a public figure, you belong to the public. You have to answer their questions. You have to satisfy their curiosity. And you have to play the role they've assigned to you. The ghost refuses the role. The ghost remains the director. They influence the narrative through proxy voices, through strategic leaks, and through the quiet manipulation of resources. They don't need to be seen to be felt. Their power is like gravity. You don't see it, but it's the only thing keeping your feet on the ground. The lesson here is simple. Stop trying to be the hero of the story. Heroes get killed. Heroes get judged. Heroes have to follow the hero's journey. Be the narrator instead. Be the person who decides when the hero enters and when they exit. Be the silence between the lines of dialogue. When you stop needing the world to acknowledge your existence, you gain a terrifying amount of leverage. You can see things they can't see because they're too busy looking at their own reflections. You can hear things they can't hear because they're too busy listening to their own voices. You become a predator of information and a ghost of action. This is the final level of the ghost protocol. It's not just about disappearing. It's about appearing only when it serves your purpose and then vanishing before the dust even settles. So as we wrap this up, I want you to look at your reflection in that mirror over there. Do you see a person who is desperate to be understood? Or do you see the beginning of a ghost? The world is a loud, chaotic place, and it's only going to get louder. You can keep screaming into the void, hoping someone will scream back, or you can step back into the shadows and start building something that doesn't need a like to exist. The ghost protocol is a one-way street. Once you realize how much power there is in being invisible, you'll never want to be seen again. The silence isn't empty, man. It's full of opportunity, but you have to be quiet enough to hear it. You have to be invisible enough to seize it, and you have to be disciplined enough to never tell anyone you did. Are we done here? Good. Now go out there and start disappearing.